Well, welcome everybody to week 2 of our April online program, all on the stigma of addiction. You remember that old joke I told you when you were clients here? How do you know an addict is lying? His lips are moving. If you're talking, you're lying. Because all addicts are liars. And not only are they all liars, they're con artists, cheats, and in any case, their brain chemistry is mush. They couldn't make a good decision if they tried. In fact, I know counselors who have told me very honestly and candidly that it is a waste of time to provide therapy for an addict until he has 1 to 2 years of clean time. And they actually truly believe this. In fact, there are even treatment programs. Here's a manual, one of the manuals, for what's called the matrix model. And the matrix model is based on some brain chemistry studies. And they actually make the argument that if you use stimulants like cocaine or amphetamines, you can't actually think clearly. It totally screws up your brain. So this entire treatment is based on what we call behaviorism, just getting you to do certain things. Because as one of the founders said, the stimulant addicts can't connect the dots. That's how bad their brains are going, right? So they couldn't make a decision to save their lives. Of course, if you've been to Sunshine Coast, you know we do things a little differently here, so we don't have to worry about all that kind of stuff. But this whole concept of all addicts are liars, con artists, cheats, this, as I told some of you, I mean, this was my treatment. This is exactly how it is. Apparently, I was this totally incapable, hopeless human being that they had to tell me exactly what to do. Because in their view, all addicts, by virtue of being an addict, are con artists, liars, cheats, and everything. And yet, as I started reading more, I mean, because it gets really kind of interesting, right? So, yeah, I'll read this book. This is by George Vaillant, the famous medical doctor. And he's telling me, well, it's actually a health situation, not a moral one. So, oh, that's kind of interesting. So, if it's a health condition, then why are all these counselors telling me I'm a liar, con artist, and cheat? Yeah, that's kind of weird. At any rate, we can go on and on. But there is, again, the stigma attached to being an addict. And by the way, the counselors who practice this kind of stuff truly believe it. I mean, this is not a debatable issue in their mind. They actually believe that addicts are hopeless human beings. I like to point out, of course, addicts are Nobel Prize winners and CEOs of large corporations and a couple of prime ministers I know of. But that doesn't seem to faze them. Still, all addicts are liars, con artists, cheats. So, one of the kickers is how do you hold these two thoughts in the same? On the one hand, you may believe it's a health condition, but on the other hand, you believe that maybe all addicts are liars, con artists, cheats. Oh, they can't be trusted and all that. And there is this really strange dynamic that happens in recovery. So again, one of the things for this week's online program is to start thinking about yourself. How do you make sense of what it means to be an addict? And on the online program, I've given you a handful of rock-solid descriptions by some of the finest thinkers around. And not one of those thinkers pins it to any sort of irresponsibility or hopelessness or any kind of defectiveness, right? And yet this is the professional opinion, but so many people in recovery have this idea that we're still all pathetic and hopeless. It's really quite interesting. So ask yourself how you make sense of the addiction. And then match up how you make sense of the addiction with, for example, the Canadian Human Rights Act, which considers it a medical disability. Or with Bill W., who called it a spiritual condition. Or with my mentor, who said it was a response to living a meaningless, monotonous, and boring life. And just see if these two things match, or whether or not maybe you actually have internalized the stigma of addiction. Maybe on the one hand you say, well, I believe it's a health condition, but on the other hand you say, yeah, but it's still all addicts are liars, con artists, and cheats, right? And just think about that and reflect on it and see if you can see if you have internalized this stigma, if you've bought into what society says about what it means to be an addict. Anyway, think about that for the week. And of course, on the online program, we have the official questions. You can send them in. And we'll see you next week.